Here with us now, Corinne Clark, Republican strategist and co-founder of FreePressFail.com, and David Carlucci, former Democratic New York State Senator. Corinne, I believe it's your first time on the show. Welcome. David, welcome back. Always good to see you. Good morning to both of you. All right, let's talk about immigration and the protest Mills showed us in Minneapolis. Joe Rogan, and I want to bring him up because he's saying this week he sees both sides of what's happening here. He also said it's more complicated than I think people want to admit. You know, people want to look at this as a black and white issue. That's his quote. Corinne, are Trump and his administration losing the narrative, not only with his base, but nationwide on how they are handling immigration?
Absolutely not. I think these protests are by design. They are meant to disrupt Trump's immigration strategy, and I think they are meant to cause a lot of emotion for people. And Joe Rogan is one of those that is caving already, thinks the optics are bad. I will say he does not speak for the base. There's no polling that shows that the base is ready to give up on this issue at all. 89% of Republicans support deportations. I think that number will only increase if we see violent protests like this. People are ready to see criminals be deported from America. And I think that that continues to be a popular agenda for Trump.
David, how do Democrats build off of the sentiment that many Americans are feeling towards Trump's immigration crackdown?
Well, unfortunately, all people have to do is see the clips and hear the stories that you just played before us. Nobody in this country wants to live under a mass police state where you just have to walk around with your birth certificate or your passport and prove citizenship at any beck and will of a masked federal agent. Look, I don't want to live in a country like that, and I do want illegal immigrants or criminals deported, but not in a blanket door-to-door, knock on my door, look in my house, and see if I'm harboring immigrants type style. It reminds me of Anne Frank, and that's what is happening here, and that's what people are concerned about. We heard a lady talk about, oh, well, just let ICE do their job if you prove your citizenship. Well, do you walk around with your birth certificate? That is the issue that we're in. And this is not mass deportation. This is mass fear. And that is what is happening. Donald Trump, the White House, is sending federal agents into chaos. They're not getting the backup from local support. They're not coordinating appropriately, and they're just using fear tactics. The interviews you showed this morning just prove that. Macing or pepper spraying a young girl and then surrounding her. This is what we want our federal agents doing? This is what we want our taxpayers going towards? I don't think so.
Speaking of affordability, Dave, I'm going to move on to that. Let me stick with you for a sec, because that was the name of the game when it came to winning elections for our president. It propelled into the White House in 2024. Here in New York City, Democrat socialist Zohran Mamdani, that also helped him get into the mayor's office. Can Democrats keep that momentum going as we head into the midterms in really just a few months?
Yeah, look, there's no question about it. Every step of the way, the White House is putting more inflationary measures forward, whether it's the mass deportation, whether it's tariffs, whether it's creeping in on the independence of the Federal Reserve. All of those issues lead towards inflationary policies where we're just going to pay more at the pump or at the gas station, at the grocery store, you name it. These are inflationary measures, and that's what's going to lead the Republicans out of Congress. Now, Democrats can't fall into that trap of just being against Republicans because right now it's just so easy. What Democrats have to do is they have to chart a course forward and talk exactly about what they're going to do. And I think that independence of the Fed, I think issues that can lower the cost of groceries and everyday goods, that is going to resonate with Americans. And more, Donald Trump is just seeming out of touch. He talks about affordability being a hoax. He talks about going into all of these foreign countries and messing in their business when he campaigned on exactly the opposite. So this is not a good time for Republicans, but Democrats do need to talk about what they are going to do different and not just be against Republicans.
And Corinne, we know the president has promised to fix the economy. The administration is touting Wall Street wins. But I think you agree with me here. The majority of Americans are not feeling it, certainly not at the grocery store. Is the administration losing touch with everyday Americans?
I think that the affordability plan has been unleashed by the White House in the last month. You've seen massive efforts to lower housing prices. He has a plan now for credit card interest rate caps. gas prices now are under $3 in 94% of cities in America. That is the first time in a decade or more. It is a lot of work being done, and I would like to disagree when my panelist here calls them inflationary policies. These are corrective measures. These tariffs, the massive deportations, all of these are corrective measures to set our economy back on track, to make the dollar stronger, and
So
that will be something that people
boxing
feel.
out the Federal Reserve or putting
I
investigations
didn't
or
interrupt
Fed
you.
chair?
I let you talk. I let
Okay,
you talk.
well, yeah, but you're bringing up fallacies. These
David,
are inflationary measures.
just-
You're
They are.
David, we're gonna let her
They
finish.
absolutely are not. That is why inflation is down continuously since Trump took office. Inflation is down. So I do think there will be a little bit of a lag for people to feel that in their wallets. I think it's very important that they do, and I hope that that happens very soon. But we can't just call them inflationary policies when inflation continues to go down. That is an absolute lie.
when we say, then the price of
Is
goods are
inflation
going
up?
up.
Is
I'm
inflation
paying
up?
more for
Let
almost
David
everything.
Is inflation up?
Corinne, we're going to let David respond very quickly.
Well, look, inflation is increasing. We just saw a graph that the price of groceries are up. Yes. And we can argue about the cost of gas that has little to do with the actions of the White House. But I'll give you that. It depends on what is happening in the economy. And when you put tariffs on products that we buy, when you deport the workers that pick our fruits, our vegetables, and do the work that we depend on, when you intimidate the Federal Reserve, the world sees that. The market reacts. When you talk about issues like a 50-year mortgage or just a credit card cap, those are issues that Democrats have been talking about for years. Maybe not the mortgage issue, because that's not helping really anyone. These are just little tinkering on the edges, but the real issues, invading countries, bullying the Fed, putting tariffs on goods that we buy, those are all increasing the cost of living. And that's the reality.
Corinne, I'm going to give you the last word.
Yeah, I actually love that Democrats think a talking point is that Trump is intimidating the Fed, and you think that that will connect with average Americans, because I can't think of a less connected talking point. So I hope you do stick with that. I think there are a lot of things that this administration is doing to lower costs. It is very important that the costs are lowered by the 2026 elections. But if Democrats continue with their anti-Trump, just blanket lies about his policies, they will.
There was not a single lie told right here.
2026 will look a lot like 2024 if we continue on that path.
Corinne
Okay,
Clark,
well,
David Carlucci. These conversations are happening at breakfast tables across the country, this very conversation. So I appreciate both of you coming on, because it's such a good snapshot of what we're all talking about. David Carlucci, Corinne, thank you so much again.
Good to be